Let's talk about what everyone came here for. G.I. Joe Operation Blackout.
Oh, not that one.
Not that one. Not even down. How's it go again? Got to get tough. Yo, Joe. Anyway, this title, as I stated up front, has not been play tested by any member of G.I. Joburg just yet. So we're going to make that caveat. But there is enough gameplay footage on YouTube to get a pretty secure idea of how she plays. I don't think too many of the major review sites have posted their scores just yet. Metacritic hasn't, certainly just yet. But we realized quite immediately, and I mean, we knew this because of probably the publisher that they tapped for it. Was it Game Mill?
Something, yeah.
Something like that. Oh dear, trust us to get the facts completely eschewed. But the bottom line is, we knew that this wasn't going to be a AAA title.
No.
So it was a case of like, will it at least be fun? Will it give a diehard G.I. Joe fan the kick, the sort of modern video game kick that they've been looking for? I guess it probably does that. I mean, I'm totally an outsider at this point because I haven't bought the toys that you play as in the game. And that is the first major sin on my part, because so much can be forgiven when you get to play with your toys digitally. Like, a G.I. Joe title that is faithful to the toys, first prize. If it breathes life into your plastic, then I'm in. Then I want to play. I want to pick up this title and play it, even if it's not as good a game as I'd always hoped for, even if it's actually, by all reports, quite mediocre and middling. Even if the cutscenes are a little bit amateurish or the voice acting is a bit stilted, it all is forgiven when you get to see your action figures fully realized in a 3D video game environment. That said, I probably wouldn't look forward to playing this. The gameplay seems dull and repetitive. A lot of shooting the same targets in the same fashion with very little variation. I'd say, there are a number of sins, and the most pervasive is the fact that, yes, this is a title that has moved G.I. Joe more towards the cartoon non-violent camp than the comic book military realism, there are consequences, there is death camp. Nobody dies, spoilers, in Operation Blackout. And there's a lot of blaster shots being flung both ways. But it seems both Cobra and G.I. Joe have drones as their primary field trooper. You're shooting at robots even when you're playing as a Cobra. You're not shooting at green shirts. G.I. Joe somehow has some kind of combat robot that just offers mindless shooting fun. Pop-up targets, if you will. But I've chewed the mic for my allotted time. Paul, do you have any opinions on this game, man? I'm sure you have a few.
I have a few. Okay, so to be fair, when this game was actually announced, I thought, I wanted to be optimistic about it, so I actually looked up the guys who made the game. And as somebody who works for a relatively small studio as well, I don't want to be like negative and be like, oh, okay, these guys have only ever done these kind of games before. What business do they have making something like this? So I wanted to see what they've done before. And, they have made quite a few games, and they've got quite a good portfolio of games that they've built from beginning to end. So I thought, okay, cool. The team's reliable, and they've worked their way to this position, So they've got this cool license. They have actually done stuff for Hasbro before.
This is Game Mill Entertainment. Let's give the credits where credits is due. The developers are Iguana Bee and Fair Play Labs, and the publisher Game Mill Entertainment and Maximum Games.
Maximum Games. So the thing is, I don't want to go because once again, it's a bit of an industry respect thing as well. You know, all the guys that worked on that game, they've done the best they could within the scope and the breadth and whatever they were given.
And the budget.
And the budget, of course. And then, yeah, and then there's the restraints or the constraints, should I say, of it being a licensed product. You know, when you do a licensed product, you know, you have a lot of stuff that you have to adhere to, and you know, like a license holder will be very strict about how things are represented, and you know, they can get quite involved in the soup. So I don't want to any criticism I have is actually not so much lobbied at the game developers. It is purely focused at the product, and I just wanted to get that away as a disclaimer because once again, it's an industry respect thing, and it's just a respect for other artists and creative people out there. That said, though, firstly, this game should not be anywhere near $40, in my opinion. I think the fact that it's $40 is actually heresy. It looks like a $20 game. The design, it's very cookie cutter. You could actually literally replace all of the G.I. Joe stuff in there with anything else, and I can actually guarantee that if that game had been skinned any other way, people would not have any praise for it. Anybody that's posting on Facebook or anybody in the G.I. Joe forums who's like, oh, this game's actually pretty good, they would not say that at all if that game was skinned differently. They wouldn't even play that game, okay?
That didn't look like a raptor silhouette or a rattler silhouette. It did look like a rattler silhouette.
Oh, there are actual rattlers in the gameplay.
Yes,
there are sequences when you're even shooting down waves of rattlers or sky strikers, depending on who you play. Perhaps we need to zoom out a little bit and just a note on gameplay. Basically, it is the single player mode, the campaign. You start out on the USS Flag, doing a sort of a slightly tacked on tutorial as Duke, but the gameplay shifts and alternates, not exactly 1-to-1, but sort of 2-to-1 between G.I. Joe components of the missions and then Cobra responses and vice versa. So you get to play through a bunch of playable characters on either side. From memory, I'm going to say on the Joe team, it's Duke, Roadblock, Sci-Fi, Lady J, Scarlet. I'm probably forgetting a few. Oh, Snake Eyes, obviously. And then on Cobra, it's Cobra Commander, Destro, Baroness, Storm Shadow, Zartan, and Firefly. The usual suspects, with a few absences. I mean, Major Blood, maybe. Scrap Iron, if you're a Scrap Iron fan. I mean, look, as you know, the list of potential characters are virtually limitless. I mean, anyone with a favorite Joe to hand would want to see them in the game. I just don't think there's a scope for that because I don't know if this game will have that long of a lifespan to warrant it. And there are further limitations in that there's no online play. That's a big one.
Yeah, there's multiplayer as far as I know, but I don't know how they handle that.
Oh, it's a split screen.
Yeah, oh, that's cool. You see, it's weird because, on paper, there's a lot of stuff that's really good sounding. That sounds good about the game. It's got this multiplayer split screen aspect because that's why you've always got a character even when you play single player. There's always a buddy that you've got running around with you.
About that buddy, just a side note, the AI is terrible. The amount of times I see the buddy character kind of running towards you, but essentially getting in your line of fire. Hang on, the bad guys are out that way, buddy character. Why aren't you firing at them? Why are you trying to reposition yourself towards me? And, the strategy that a lot of people have noted is the only one that really works for the majority of these gunfights, or if not all of them, is you just kind of backing off from your target constantly. Yeah. There's no kind of duck and cover mechanic. You basically expose yourself to enemy fire and move back off while firing at them. And of course, your computer-controlled friend will just keep running into your field of fire. Fortunately, there's no friendly fire, but maybe they should have been, because it would have been nice to just headshot Lady J and get her out of the way.
Right, yeah. No, but that's exactly the thing. It's that's what I'm getting at with it being very cookie cutter. I mean, there's been no thought in the actual gameplay design and the gameplay loop. There's, every time, I mean, I watched that guy, there's a gentleman that posted like a 4-hour long playthrough of this game, and
Yeah, we're using his footage right now.
there
Thanks,
you go.
guy.
Thanks, guy. You'll be credited in the YouTube video. But like you watching like him playing and you're watching this game go down, and I thought, okay, cool. I'm gonna be cool. I'm gonna try and watch like maybe a 10-minute segment and then like squeeze through. And I gotta say, like, I just can't. I just sat there and I'm just like, it's just so repetitive. The soundtrack is sort of like sitting there in the corner of something going, and then you just got, and it's such a mess. Sonically, it's such a mess. And then visually, okay, I'll give them credits. The design of like a lot of the props and things does look very interesting, and the character design is great because that's what we're seeing in the toys, and a lot of that
And the
looks cool.
lighting effect, man.
Oh god, it's just...
Sometimes it's very cool. Sometimes I'm like, yes, this is Cobra's base, and it's full of like red glowing lights, and I'm like, yes. But then they've also turned the kind of Arashikage dojo into, and the USS Flag for that matter, into
the
like
Disco
Tron.
Dojo.
Yeah, it's very, very Tron.
Yeah.
I'm sure Cujo, you're licking your lips, man, but maybe not for my G.I. Joe
But
game.
then one day, I got in, guys.
It's a very synthwave, synthetic kind of presentation, always.
It's just done badly.
You never once, you never once feel like you're like a gung-ho, gyrene creeping through the jungles.
Yeah.
You're always firing your ray gun at exploding robots surrounded by neon lights.
Let me derail the naysayers momentarily. As we say, G.I. Joe Media doesn't miss a step. G.I. Joe News on Twitter, cheers guys, they put up a poll, and it had like you could pick one of 4 options, and essentially it got like a C grade, like more right than wrong. Pick one thing that could have given this game a little bit of G.I. Joe personality. I mean, obviously it can't be a redo. Everybody's on a budget. What's one thing to you, Paul, that could have just made this game a little tastier?
Well, for starters, they should have not made the game an amusement park attraction, because you're basically just shooting ducks. That's it. It's a gallery shooter, and it's poorly done. So how they could have fixed it is maybe made it that within that budget, and I know they can do it because my team could do it within what I imagine the budget for that game was, but they could have made it that every character you play has a unique thing. So they could have made like Duke. They could have made the Duke sections all the action sections. They could have given you Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes to do sort of infiltration sections, and then you get them to certain points and you have to get them to hack stuff or creep around, exactly. And then they could have done like a cute kind of mini game, like a Commander style mini game for characters like Cobra Commander, where maybe you could have like they could have even just made a basic little tower defense kind of game.
Let me ask you this,
they could have
Paul.
made meta. Yeah, that's
How did it feel to see Storm Shadow breaking out a pistol?
Oh, dude, that irritates me. I think you guys. I think you smelled that the second I mentioned it on the WhatsApp group as we were prepping for the show, because, that's exactly the problem with the game, is that Storm Shadow having a gun is not an unprecedented thing, and it's not like rule breaking. He is a ninja and guns kill people, so, so just say people with guns kill people. But like, it's a tool for killing, right? So it's fine that a ninja's using a gun. There's no problem with that. But the thing is, that is not what makes Storm Shadow cool. Running around and shooting people as a ninja does not make it cool. Sneaking around as a ninja and doing like one-shot style assassinations, or being able to do all kinds of cool ninja stuff, or these they could have had these cool little running sections. They could have made it like kind of a weird runner where you're running like really fast as Storm Shadow or Snake Eyes, and you could
you're
bounce
outside
off
the budget.
walls and throw kunai or chop bats in half and that kind of stuff. They just made him another dude with a gun. It's like everything there just feels like another game that's been skinned as G.I. Joe. That's my issue.
Sounds to me, Paul, that what you're getting at is it needed a change of pace. A little
Yes.
gear shift, mission to mission. Unfortunately, it is always running and gunning, regardless of who you're playing as, regardless of what the mission objective is. It's killing endless waves of the same opponent, be it Bat or G.I. Joe drones, and then ending up in a boss battle where you're effectively killing, or not even killing, making one or two of the enemy's playable characters kneel.
Yeah.
That's what they do when they run out of health. They kind of like just go down on one knee. Yeah, no, very PC, very safe. To answer your question, Cooj, on a macro level, what I and any other true blue G.I. Joe fan would want is to give G.I. Joe the AAA budget it deserves as a license. There's so much to Joe, and only a AAA title could scratch that surface. You know, give it the depth of writing and story and playability and functionality that you get from the big shooter titles. G.I. Joe deserves that. It's an absolute no-brainer, and particularly with G.I. Joe on the resurgence, it's a shame that we stopped short of greatness. You know, the reason I cite the NES title as one of the greatest G.I. Joe games, if not the greatest G.I. Joe game, was it was a sleeper hit. On the 8-bit console, G.I. Joe had no right being one of the best NES games ever produced, and yet it
Yes,
is.
it is.
It absolutely is. It plays so well. This game, Operation Blackout, will be relegated to the same oddities bin that the Rise of Cobra game is relegated to. It's just an absolutely middling title that, as a G.I. Joe fan who loves his toys, you're going to get some enjoyment seeing them digitized, but that's pretty much where the enjoyment stops. I don't know. Look, once again, I must recuse myself because I haven't played it, but it seems like I would quickly grow tired of the repetition. But that's on a macro level. That's me just saying throw more money at it and maybe we'd get a better game. On a more micro level, a reviewer put it best when he said that the guns have no impact. You're spending more time shooting than not, and it feels like you're firing a super soaker.
Yep.
These are little pew 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 guns. And the biggest culprit is unfortunately the biggest sort of shitstorm of controversy when it comes to the action figures, and that's Heavy Weapons Man Roadblock. And his bloody neutrino wand electroshock weapon, which has no impact. It's just you're just kind of draining enemies' health with this I don't know, snap of electricity. When you should be blowing robots to pieces with a big old 50 cal round. Come on, man. Give us the satisfaction of some impactful shooting.
Exactly. But that's and here's the thing. So I'm going to mention two things. Firstly, I'm going to throw a spanner in the works of, your macro overview and that, throw more money at it and you can make a better game. I agree with that fully because in practice that is very true. If you have a bigger budget and you can be a little bit more audacious with that budget, then yes, you can actually get a much better product out of it. However,
it doesn't just filter down to gameplay. I mean, the overarching story is as ham-fisted as they come. I'm not going to get into details, but as you see it play out, you really are. I mean, if you're thinking about it a bit critically, which I'm known to do, your head is in your hands and you're groaning. It's really, really piss poor. I mean, it does do the old trope of like Cobra in the White House and the Cobra banners flapping from the rooftop. But the direction it goes in thereafter, it definitely does tap into that Sunbow Ron Friedman, like, just pull that one out of my thumb.
Yeah, but even that stuff was like more creative than what the plot for this game is. But yes, it is cut from a similar cloth, definitely. The thing is, I've seen quite a few games recently in the last few months that have been $20 titles that have been an incredible amount of fun. That I've thoroughly loved and enjoyed, and they didn't have, I don't even think they had a quarter of the budget that this game had, And they just offer a lot of what's missing in these games because they have got good game design. And one of them I'm talking about is a game. It's based on a licensed title. It's called The Mummy Demastered. Okay, that's based on the Tom Cruise Mummy movie, right? Okay, now you think, you hear me say this and you go, oh my word, that movie like sucked. Okay, and then you're like, why would they make a game on that load of crap? And that's the whole joke. They made a Metroidvania style game. They managed to pull a really deep, almost frightening, well created game out of that license, and they called it The Mummy Demastered, and it looks like a PlayStation 1 2D platformer. It is beautiful, and it's really, really well done, and it reminds me a lot of the original G.I. Joe games by Taxan. Another one is a game called Blazing Chrome, which is basically a Contra knockoff, but once again, smaller budget, but very focused on getting gameplay and that bullet feel right. That shooting, that it's the same thing as a guitar strum. When you strum a guitar, you're like, yeah, this is amazing. When you want that feeling in your guns when you play games. You want that rock and roll feeling from your guns. Pun intended. Rock and roll's like, yeah, man. There was another one, and then there's a game called The Hunt Down, which is just absolute 80s bliss. It's this whole love letter to 80s action movies. It's got these three out of this world like kind of characters that are just more than, they're just super extra. And the soundtrack is great. The graphics are beautiful. It's just a straightforward run from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen and shoot the crap out of everything. And that is repetitive, right? But how did they manage to make it really great after over 20 levels? Well, they got a great feedback loop. They make the environments interesting. They make the characters fun. That's all that this G.I. Joe game needed. In fact, I actually think Hasbro shouldn't have even tried to go 3D with this. They should have tried to maybe make like a cool retro throwback game. Another great retro throwback game that we've had, Streets of Rage 4. Also a $30 title. Okay? And amazing game. Once again, small development team. I think there's like 10 people. There's more people marketing the game than people that actually made the game. So that's why the money...
So it can be done, Paul.
It can be done. It can be done.
G.I. Joe fans, we just gotta suck it again.
Stephen, we've commented on the graphics, etc. Was there any characterizations within the people featured that you liked or didn't like?
There's some vehicle combat. It's not very good, but I'm glad it's in there. Kind of gives you a little unfair taste of what a AAA G.I. Joe game might be, where you have the ability to be ace and kind of scramble from the deck of the USS Flag and fly Sky Striker in a desperate fight against waves of incoming rattlers. That doesn't happen. This is my flight of fancy. But you do get some driving sections where you commandeer Hiss tanks, or you don't commandeer them. You, as Destro and the Baroness, you're driving a Hiss 2 with kind of a modified enclosed turret. And they have rapid fire weapons and then a kind of a chargeable big gun.
I know what
and you're driving down this kind of desert track. There are various kind of obstacles, stalagmites falling from the cave ceilings in one sequence, or giant sort of rock obelisks that are falling over. You're fighting...
Hey!
You're fighting Persuaders, G.I. Joe Persuaders. And the boss battle is a Tomahawk with only its front rotor blade animated for some reason. It's very strange. If ever you've wondered what a Tomahawk would look like with a single set of rotor blades, well, there you go. But they do correct that in a cut sequence or in the kind of escape sequence at the end of the game. Anyway, it's just weird.
Since you mentioned the Persuader, if you'd like to hear the other end of the spectrum, I believe Full Force did cover the video game as well. So D80 and Justin Bell did have some glowing words, which I don't disagree with, by the way.
I'll say this much about the Persuader. I've never really considered it up till now, but like maybe on a subconscious level, the reason I don't like it so much is because in terms of its configuration, it is a Hiss tank reskinned to be green. Like the top turret, the sloped front. Okay, the slope works in a different geometry, but like it's got that swoopy Hiss tanky feel to it. With the angle at the back is almost the same. lovingly reproduced on the skin, the video game skin, is the Deadeye sticker at the back of the
Yeah,
Persuader.
I thought that
That's
was good.
awesome. But yeah, man, it's interesting to see those two vehicles as your playable ground vehicles. You don't get a Snowcat, you don't get a Mobat, you don't get a Mauler. I mean, like, there's so many absences in terms of the playable vehicles. You're always going to fall back onto those two tanks, and you don't get to jump in the cockpit of any kind of aircraft. You get to fight Rattlers, you get to fight Sky Strikers, you get to fight Tomahawks, but you're denied the option to play as them, unfortunately. And the driving sections are very kind of rail-based. You have no real freedom. They're made to be punchy and fast, but you have no real control. You're kind of avoiding obstacles, be it man-made or natural. and the vehicle occupants in one section are Lifeline and Mainframe, interestingly. And a little Easter egg that I wanted to bring your attention to, gentlemen, is I could have missed my guess, but it feels a lot like Lifeline has a crush on Duke. That's some intriguing writing, because
Okay.
at one point, Lifeline's kind of calling out Mainframe's combat credentials, which is a popular trope with Mainframe. I'll give the writers credit for that. And Mainframe says, "I'll let you know I'm just as capable as Duke." And Lifeline's response to that is, "Yeah, but not as good looking."
Yeah, I heard that line, and I must say I didn't even think about it that way.
Well,
That's actually quite interesting.
man.
That's a bit woke. Yeah.
It is a little bit woke. I don't know. Take it or leave it. I hope I haven't soured that for anyone who is less on the woke side of the political divide. But it does raise some questions as to the all-inclusive combat force that G.I. Joe is.
Well, let me piggyback off that. Unless you were still going.
Oh, I've got loads of Easter eggs, but please do piggyback, my friend.
This is the one thing, and I believe an article dropped, and I'm kicking myself because I just wasn't able to track it down on social media, but the people that made the game was made for the fans, by fans. So considering that, it's always nice to have fans making the game. And I think you guys had a successful launch, to be honest. So cheers. If I was looking for something small that would have just made everybody fall in love with you right away, my favorite part of watching people play the game is those little, like, I guess they're like little bust shots or heads and shoulders that talk to you for a second. Like, they pop on the screen and they get, they're communicating with you. And like BioShock used that same trick, to save money on the budget. You have like a static picture and somebody talks to you for a second.
Guessing, basically. You
should have done those for the bad guys too. Like, if you would have had a Viper go, "I'm the one that's going to kill that Joe," and it just pops on the screen for a second. Or like if when the jets went overhead, you see Wild Weasel just give you a salute when the bombs are coming down. That would have been...
Cooj, it speaks to how empty the world feels. And this comes back to the fact that you're killing mindless bots. It's like the only human beings in this game are the small cabal of playable characters.
Hasbro says you can't step on an ant. How do you show a guy dying on screen? Like, as soon as they get shot, they just kind of freeze in that torment position?
They take a knee. That's what they do. They just kind of crouch down. No, look, I mean, it is that's probably what makes the gameplay feel so repetitive and mindless, is the fact that you are only ever surrounded by these robots. Like, your entire Cobra base, and you don't encounter any blue shirts, any technical personnel. You don't have to kill them. You could take them prisoner, or you could just, observe them running away, or have some kind of interactions with them. But it doesn't, the game doesn't extend that far. The reality of this world, it's a paintball arena, or a laser tag arena. It's not a thriving, fully realized G.I. Joe and Cobra world. The USS Flag is very vacant. I mean, it's cluttered with broken Sky Strikers and ramshackle fortifications, because it's effectively under siege by Cobra. And then at one point, as Joe, you retake it. Exciting stuff, but also a way to reuse an environment. Way to go, developers. But, it just feels so vacant and so empty, unfortunately.
The one thing that kind of put me off, and it is fundamental, because I'll recall a line I heard from Buzz Dixon when I interviewed him, and you evoke Ron Friedman, I'll go Buzz Dixon. he said that the thing that makes a Joe is to be able to discern what's happening and adapt. So, I mean, like, the one line that kind of put me off is I think there's a bunch of people in a persuader and they're chasing a rattler and somebody jumps on it. Is it Sci-Fi that jumps onto the rattler to hang on?
Yeah.
And whoever's driving the persuader goes, "What just happened?" Like, that's okay if it's like Adam Scott on Parks and Rec, but I think a funnier line would have been like, "I think it was my turn to jump onto this, supersonic jet or whatever." And then, of course, you could have the lady, who's a Lady J, just go, "Well, you're just going to have to settle for driving a 210 War Machine, touche."
Look, I wouldn't say there's much wit in the scripting, and some of the lines feel completely boneheaded, like it's a first draft practically. Does anyone want to talk about the cutscenes? They're not handled with in-game graphics or as movie sequences.
Well,
they are comic book.
I like that as a storytelling device, kind of like the just the kind of sliding frame or whatever. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah. I've got a few positive things I want to say about this game. And those cutscenes are part of the positive. It's more a case of the implementation of that. Like, they could have just had talking heads. You mentioned having little pop-ups come up in the corner with talking heads. They could have done that the whole game, throughout the whole game without those cutscenes. The fact that they sprung for those cutscenes is cool. Whether you like the style of art used for that and you like the execution, that's really going to differ from person to person. From a professional standpoint, I thought they were handled very nicely. Listen, they can always be better, but I think that they are one of the better things in the game. Like, they actually are one of the things that sort of show off the most polish.
I found an Easter egg, and it does hang nicely with your point, Cooch, that this was fan-made. In the final cutscene, we have Ace flying a large grey transport plane. I swear it is the AB-115 Shark by True Heroes. It has the same teeth decal along the side, the same configuration, and it even has sort of the gun barrels poking off the sides of the aircraft, which have cool. No place on like a C-130. Like the C-130 Spectre, or was it Spooky or Smoky or whatever, has the guns pointed outwards, which the AB-115 incidentally does have, sort of at right angles to the fuselage. But these are the light-up guns, the sort of electronic lights and sounds guns that poke, towards the front. And it's reproduced in the artwork. So I'm thinking, this artist either has the toy or is fully aware of the fact that Joe fans the world over have repurposed that True Heroes plane as their de facto G.I. Joe transport plane.
No, that is a cool little Easter egg, actually. It's pretty obscure as well.
Same tone of grey. And yeah, I mean, it is pretty obscure. Blink and you miss it, but I didn't.
And that's why we love you, Steve, because you pick up stuff like that very quickly.
Let's say in a fantasy world, this game has some legs. Like, an easy thing to do would just, like, the Tiger Force skins. People will still play if you keep dropping, like, these little kind of, like, and to the end where, like, you're fighting robots. Yeah, maybe that's where you slip in, because I know we got those Scrap Iron fans out there. Maybe that's where a little screen of Scrap Iron comes up that goes, "They're cutting through our bats," and people are getting rattled and stuff like that. That could work too.
Once again, on the positive side of things, those little cutscenes are great. And then I also really like the character design, but that's because I already like the character design in the toys, and I've already seen the toys, and I like the toys. At least I like the design of the toys. So a lot of that is echoed in the game. And yes, unfortunately, there is a small contrast between stuff that's been released as a toy and stuff that hasn't been. So I'll turn your attention to a character like Mainframe. Mainframe, you can see, is them sort of zooshing up the original vintage look of Mainframe, but you can see that that's not his actual design. That's not the classified design for him. Because if you see a character like Sci-Fi is also a zooshed up version, but still has enough that says to me, at least, that this is actually what Sci-Fi is going to look like when they release him as a toy, more or less. So it's cool to see a lot of that. But one of the things that I picked up that I really liked was in that ill-fated roadblock section where you're busy beaming things. The Cobra, I think they're trying to evoke that snake robot from the earlier Sunbow line. I think it's from the one miniseries. There's that cool, You know, that snake robot, it's like a really big... It's kind of cheesy looking, but in the game, there's a really cool modern design of that. And I hope we see that as a toy, because it was cool to see that thing in the game. Like, that was a well-done design. I also like the bats. I thought the bats were executed quite well. And because I have a good understanding
well, you'd
of
hope
how...
so. They're pretty much the only enemy that you're encountering.
Right? Exactly. So, and when I think of them being translated into toy form, I'm quite excited about that, because... You know, if I see how Duke was translated into the video game based on his toy, there are some things about the video game version that I think are super garish but look fine on the toy. So I'm hoping that that same thing holds true for the bats. I'm also glad that the Baroness doesn't have her hair half dipped in purple in the toy form.
Yeah, interesting choice that. It's like the Baroness evoking Zorana. If you don't know what we're talking about, it seems like Zorana's skin in this video game, not Zorana, the Baroness's skin in this video game has this like fade to purple toward her tips. Weird hair.
Weird hair.
Weird
I
hair.
mean,
Punk style. Let me just correct myself for a sec. It seems that you do fight human bots in the Arashikage dojo. They're sort of enemy ninja that you fight through, but they disappear into a puff of smoke instead of lying down on the floor dead.
Well, that's
I'm alright with a puff of smoke.
At least there's some variation.
Well, minor variation, but yeah, I'll take it.
You know, that's the problem with like that kind of design in a game, is that it starves you for that. You know, a part of you keeps playing it hoping that it gets better, and then you get to the credits and you're like, well, it didn't. But like, I don't want to like I said, I don't want to rag on it too much. I also
let's wrap this one up. Let's try and put a positive spin on it. A little bit of constructive criticism from the three of us.
I like the voice acting.
There's a positive. Voice acting, cool. I will say that Mainframe's voice artist, I had to double check the credits because it sounds a hell of a lot like fellow G.I. Joe podcaster Jared from the Joe Headcast.
Oh, cool.
Yard sale artist. Yeah, dude. I think his name's Jared Albright or Albrecht. Either way, Jared, dude, if you want to hear a voice actor that sounds splitting, not image, splitting sound, whatever. It's just like him.
The struggle is
sounds
real.
just like him. Anyways, good point, Paul.
Yeah, the voice acting is cool. Some of the performances, like you mentioned, I think fail because of the lines. But for the most part, really cool, like, voice acting. Like, that's something that definitely took my attention. Like, I was like, oh, cool. Also, I love seeing sci-fi. I'm a fan of sci-fi, and it was cool to see him in the game. Part of me is like really hoping to do a toy, so that's a small part. I mean, that's what should happen, right? You should see this stuff and get excited about, you know, more of this being a toy. And I like the UI. Like, it's something that people like completely overlook, but I think from the UI, the user experience part of the menus and the weapon selection stuff and all that, I thought that was done quite well. Like, it's not like amazing, but it's done quite well. And then I just want to put in this small little caveat as well. Guys, understand that for me, I'm judging this game from the perspective of I've played Transformers War for Cybertron, and you know, and that was, to me, that's the best representation of a Hasbro product in video game form. It is epic. I love that game. It's so sad that you cannot find it as a digital download. It is now quite difficult to get because it's only a physical release, physical copy. So if you can get your hands on that, it's a great game. I know that is a AAA game. I know that it's made by a big studio. It's not fair to compare it, but there are some things there that one could like sort of distill into a smaller product, a smaller, cheaper product, and that's what I'm judging it by.
But Hasbro should be backing their G.I. Joe with that kind of financial tonk.
Definitely.
It's unfortunate to me, man. Yes, Transformers has a more privileged position these days because it is a thriving toy line and movie franchise, whereas G.I. Joe has kind of limped along by their, you know, fan indulgence, our indulgence for a long while. But, you know, a strong video game could only help.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be money wasted. It's just, yeah, man, it's a shame. It's a shame that the level of investment wasn't there up front. But I said I'd put a positive spin on this section. And for my part, I'd say that while you're kind of denied it when you're watching effectively a speed run of the gameplay, I know that what I would do if I had this title in hand is pour over all the little details. And they are there, man. There are some love notes to classic toys. You see a lot of parked vehicles, for instance. I would just spend minutes, if not longer, just poring over a parked Sky Striker, or the Mobat done up in black and with the Cobra symbols on it. I forget what it's called. I think it might even be a Canadian exclusive, because it wasn't the Crimson Attack
Crimson
Tank.
Strike, right?
Crimson Attack Tank, the CAT has red
Oh,
accents,
you're right. Yeah.
whereas there was a Canadian release that Form BX257, it was a mail away, I think, and he did a review on it where it's entirely black, and that's what they used, presumably, in some of the Cobra bases. It's parked there. And I'm sure there are other details. Like, I would want to go to like the command centers and look at all the screens and see what kind of digital information they're portraying. So those are the things that would add value to this game, in my opinion. You know, the gameplay is what it is, but somebody designed all these environments and these worlds and this cathedral-like interior for the USS Flag, which, granted, it's a big boat, but I'm pretty sure, like any carrier in the world, it's a little bit more cramped on the inside than they're depicting it. The hangar is one thing, but like it seems to have this command node, but oh jeez, I'm getting negative again. Sorry. That's my takeaway. Cooge, what do you got to round us up, my friend?
Well, these words are coming from somebody who went 1,000 for 1,000 on the gamer score on the last Joe game. I think that was on Xbox something. It was the movie game. It wasn't bad, though they did have Firefly screaming. Yeah, no, I mean, the game, I think you guys nailed it with the fact that, like, what is G.I. Joe? It's details. And the guns did not pop. Of course, they're laser guns, but no, I would say if you're the studio
they quite
behind
literally
this game,
did pop because they're pop guns.
If you're the studio behind this game
nerfed.
and you've been strong enough to take all these words, know that G.I. Joe fans are, of course, are the toughest in the world, but we love you long time. I think you know that. Don't give up on the game, because it's probably going to find a lot of stockings this Christmas. And I think, because you know that price
it's in the bargain bin.
Yes, but those Tiger Force skins, and honestly, give some love to the community. I don't know how you do that, but Hasbro, media is changing. Show us some love. That's all.
But I would like to add to what you're saying there, as well, with the stocking stuff aside of it. I really hope that this game achieved its projected target in terms of sales and whatever, so that this company gets a chance to make a second one or another game for Hasbro in the G.I. Joe series, because I think they'll nail it the second time round. I've got a really good feeling, just also coming from the production background.
This was a misfire.
No, I think what happened is, I think they had all of these great ideas, and I honestly do think they have a lot of great ideas, because this is what happens. A client comes to you and they want you to do this game, and you come up with this great game, and then the client's got this kind of budget, this kind of timeline, so you kind of streamline what you can do well to the best of your ability within that timeline. And then that's also, in a weird way, like you're proving time, like you're proving yourself to that client. You know, in this case, the client would be Hasbro. So you're proving to Hasbro that you can actually make this game from beginning to end, and that it can be successful. And hopefully, Hasbro has seen that, okay, cool, this team actually knows what it's doing. We can actually let them have a little bit more control of the design and you know, sort of loosen the apron strings a little bit and not get like too much on top of them. Because I think there's all of these ideas that they wanted to put in. They just were like, we can't do that now. You know, we don't have the budget to get that skill set up, or we don't have the budget to get this dev kit in, or whatever's right now. So
all right.
So I'm hoping, and I'm sorry, my dog is barking frantically outside because there seems to be some drama outside. But I really do hope we get a sequel to this, because I really think the second time round will actually be much better, and it will be more polished and more cohesive. And I think Hasbro needs to be brave and let somebody do a second G.I. Joe game. Like, let the same company do that. Because I even think the original team that worked on the old EA Nightmare of a game, I think even they could have done a better second game. definitely.
All right, Operation Turn Up. But aside from that, actually, I lost it. It's gone.
And so are we. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been G.I. Joburg, Operation Blackout. I'm intrigued. What do you think of the game? Let us know in the comments section down below. But from Steve, I'm gonna be fading into the darkness. I'm gonna hit that button on that Xbox and
Rip Van Steven.
Red Ring of Death.
And this is Paul hoping I get to unwrap a Star Wars Squadrons in a week or so. So while I try to find my pilot jumpsuit and my helmet, I will see you next time.
And this is Cujo on the West Coast saluting the best media team in the world and saying that Blackout was okay with me.
Are you gonna buy it, Cooch?
I'm an Evercade man. You know that.
Yeah, you like him retro. Me too.
Yes. Well, like I say, you want that G.I. Joe experience, you gotta go retro.
Canton escape.
Later, guys.
Later.